So what we want to talk about is how to make evidence sandwiches. We call this the sandwich method of quotation integration. And just like if you know how to make a sandwich, you have something of value that people will pay for. It provides a convenient, useful, digestible piece of nutrition. When you know how to write evidence sandwiches, it gives value to your literary analysis papers. And that's why we want to, in this little video, go over the parts of the evidence sandwich, how you put them together, and then we'll take a look at one example of a decent sandwich taken from a student paper. These, by the way, all have to do with the novel by Ken Kesey, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. But it's true for any sandwich. Every sandwich has three parts. In the first section, you've got the point, you've got the context, and you've got the speaker. This is the introduction of the sandwich. So the first part, top piece of bread, the introduction. You want to do certain things here. You want to have the point given, tell your reader what you want this piece of evidence to do, how it proves whatever you're claiming. The second thing you want to do in the introduction, the top piece of bread, is give the context. Tell your reader where this thing comes from in the text, when it's happening in the text. In the plot, this is after she tries to wake Betty, and then Abigail turns to the other girls, and then she'll say something that you want to quote. So you also want to have the speaker and the text in there too. So just a reminder that this comes from this book, and this is the speaker. So here's a sample quotation if we were going to use this as the meat of our sandwich, and this is a quotation taken from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. We're going to try and sandwich this thing into an evidence sandwich that will help to prove a point, and you'll see what it is. Here's the quotation. I'll give you a second to read that. It's about the big nurse and how she controls things, and we'll see what we do with it. So here's an introduction for that piece of meat, for that evidence. In part one of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Chief Bromden describes Nurse Ratched as someone who depersonalizes and manipulates the patients in the ward. And then we have the specific page number. Bromden is hallucinating the nurse, and here's the quotation, setting the wall clock at whatever speed she wants, whenever she takes a notion to. The patient seemed insect-like and silly. Now notice the quotation marks around the words that are taken from that piece of meat. Also notice this interpolation of words to help it flow in the sentence. You should be able to do that. Put brackets around the words or the addition to words that you're adding to make it flow in your introduction or your explanation. And notice also we've got the MLA citation at the end. Since we've already identified the source, we don't need to do more than just give the page number here. So the point has to go into our introduction, remember that. So this is going to tell your reader what it is you want to do with this piece of meat. And here's the point. Chief Bromden is going to be describing Nurse Ratched as someone who depersonalizes and manipulates the patients. Great. Now we know what to do with this meat. It also needs to give the context, where and when this is happening, and you'll see that indeed it's in this novel, and this is happening in a description of the ward. So there we are in the place of the quotation. And finally, the speaker of the quotation and the text, and that needs to go into the introduction too. We've now got the speaker, Chief Bromden, and what he's doing there, hallucinating things about Nurse Ratched. Now, the middle section is, of course, the quotation that's going to provide evidence for your claim. That's the meat of the sandwich. And, of course, you want to use MLA format when you quote it. And then after you've got a good piece of evidence that proves whatever claim you're trying to make, you want to make sure that your reader sees how you're interpreting and explaining it, and to back up whatever inference you're making. So that's the last piece of bread in the sandwich. So let's take a look at that bottom piece. It's going to interpret the quotation by explaining whatever facts are there that lead you to your inference. An inference is just you connecting the facts to make some kind of larger meaning out of it. You're going to explain how that quotation does what you want it to do in terms of strengthening or supporting your claim. So here's an explanation. Sample. In part 1 of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Chief Browden describes Nurse Ratched as someone, and we just got that whole thing. The patient seemed insect-like and silly, so she can move them wherever she or whatever speed she wants. Okay, here comes the explanation, the bottom piece of bread. One can see in this passage that the nurse does not see the patients as human or serious. Instead, they're insect-like, silly. One may infer from this that Nurse Ratched enjoys feeling powerful, whom she sees as her playthings. And the facts there are highlighted here for you. This is what leads us to the inference. And we have the specific quotations. These are quoted specifically. And this is what we call requoting when we pull out specific words. And also, we want to make sure that the reader can see how we're coming to this point. The larger point, the inference, is given at the bottom here. You see that. So that's the bottom piece of bread. So here's just a quick little piece of a sandwich taken out of somebody's paper. What do you think about this? What do you see here? Facing fears by ignoring them and enjoying yourself can be seen. Okay, that sounds like a point. Then we have the context. We're still at the top piece or the introduction piece of the bread in the evidence sandwich. We've got McMurphy taking his friends on the fishing trip. Okay, that's where it is. And you can see the top piece of bread there. We've got the context. Then we have finally the speaker, Chief Browden, who is going to be describing how McMurphy is just laughing, and the rest of the quotation cited with MLA style. So clearly that's a nice top piece of bread for an evidence sandwich. Okay, so again, the introduction with MLA format is going to provide the context, the point, and the speaker in text. Okay, just a reminder of that. Now, here's another piece of meat, and let's see how we can make this into a sandwich. This is that same passage from part 3 of Cuckoo's Nest, where I'll give you a moment to read this. Harding is freaking out until he sees that McMurphy is only laughing, and then he pulls the fish in with a graceful motion like he's been boating fish all his life. Now, here's an introduction for that. In part 3, notice we're getting the top piece of bread giving us the place. It's the speaker, Chief Browden, describing how, when the fish start biting, the men all look to McMurphy for help, afraid of the unknown themselves. Okay, that's the context. Then we have the quotation. Who's speaking it? Browden, stating that everyone was shouting at him to do something, but he wasn't moving. Even the doctor is asking McMurphy for assistance. And here's the point, or the little elaboration of that. Instead of helping the men, McMurphy was just laughing. So we've got the point. McMurphy, we know where this is happening, and we know what he's doing, and we can see what the reader wants to make of that. The men of the fishing boat all are looking to him for help, afraid of the unknown themselves. That is the point. The context, of course, we've got where this is in the book, and then we've got the speaker in the text. We've got Chief Browden stating all this. Okay, the quotation itself, we've already given you that. So finally, here's the interpretation and explanations. I'll see how this ties the sandwich together. Again, it's going to interpret the quotation by explaining the facts leading to the inference and explain how the quotation supports those. So check it out. In part 3, we've already read this. We've got this nice introduction. Chief Browden is describing all this stuff, and here's the quotation. McMurphy is just laughing. Okay, here comes the bottom piece of bread, right here. McMurphy's laughter ignores the men's fears and serves to encourage them. Because he's not helping, the men forget their fears and act. When, quote, Harding finally saw McMurphy wasn't going to do anything, he gets the gaff, jerks the fish into the boat, and then later, Scanlon also acts when McMurphy Scanlon bravely grabs and wrestles, or grabbing and wrestling, Chief's fish so that it will not go over the side. When the Chief writes, it goes on, everyone was shouting at him to do something. Notice how we're kind of extending the quotation area, but that's okay. We've already started our point, and now we're just continuing on with it, with this explanation. He's describing a fear-based panic situation among the men. Now, it's natural for men in the first moments of crisis to look to a leader for direction, and when the leader doesn't respond, it's natural for the followers to become paralyzed. So when McMurphy chooses to just laugh, it brings out natural courage in the men. Harding is acting swiftly, so does Scanlon, which he or they may not have done had McMurphy intervened. So it could be inferred, here's the point, again, McMurphy is helping the men overcome their fears by reminding them that they're more capable than their fears are telling them. Okay, so again, here are the facts that lead to the point, McMurphy's laughter, what it does, explaining how that happens, and here's the big inference at the end. Okay, so a reminder, if we have the top, introduction, the meat itself, quotation, and bottom piece of bread, explanation, we can write a complex inference, have the skills to design, market, and own many restaurants, because now we are able to do a very complex piece of valuable work that helps our reader digest our meaning. Okay, thank you very much.